Okay. We'll call the Newcastle Planning Board meeting to order. Today is August 15th, 2024, 6:30 p.m. Second thing on the agenda is to review the minutes of our June 24th, 2024 Planning Board meeting. Does anyone have a motion on the minutes? Move to accept. Kevin, second.
I can second it. I wasn't here.
You
so
weren't
I won't
here.
Vote on it. So
Were you here? Who was here?
It was,
you were here, I think.
oh, Lucas was here.
The last meeting?
Yes.
No, 2 meetings ago.
2 meetings.
Oh, 2 meetings. Yeah. I was,
Oh,
yeah, 2 meetings. Ago.
yes,
Yeah.
two,
Yeah.
sorry.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right, because I'm one behind. Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. All right, so it was just the three of us who were here that meeting. So, did we have any discussion, corrections, conversation about the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the minutes from June 24th?
It's
3
gonna
and
be 3
abstain. Perfect. Thank you. Wonderful. I'm just going to interject a little thing there to amend the agenda. So under item 4, new business A, where it says none, we're going to go ahead and put in the housekeeping of electing the chair and vice chair for the upcoming year, current year that we're in. So the next thing on our agenda is under old business, item A, map 004 lot 048 subdivision application. Come on up. Why not? Jeff, is it gonna mess you up if we move the table? Whatever works. This is a continuation of well, actually, this is the application review for the pre-submittal meeting that we had at our last meeting about a subdivision application on Woods Hill Road. There were some changes that were made, and yes.
Yeah, I can give you a little review. So you saw it's basically one property now that is being proposed to be subdivided. We had a conversation at the last meeting that to sort out like how much frontage was needed and whether or not you have driveways or shared roads and how that counted towards frontage. So anyway, following up on that conversation, I think are there 6 now lots now, or are there 5 now?
6 proposed lots.
6 proposed. There were 7, I think. There were 8?
Yes.
Okay, so there were 8. Anyway, the lots had to get wider, so now there's fewer lots. So all of the lots now have at least 250 feet of frontage and they range from 230 to 277 feet wide, where the minimum required width is 100 feet. So, and that's basically because of geometry. So I'll let the applicant kind of go through anything they want. There's no building proposed on any of the lots right now. It's just a division of the land. But we'll go through just for the board after the conversation we had with the attorney last time, where there's going to have to be, I guess, several kind of votes just to say like, yes, it meets these standards. Yes, it meets those groups of standards. And then we can do kind of a final vote at the end, depending on how all of that goes.
Real quick, I just noticed something we should do just so that we're in compliance here is before we get to the review, we should discuss a disclosure of conflict of interest, which is just an opportunity for board members to disclose that they have a potential conflict of interest or an ethical conflict of interest regarding the application. Does anyone have one they'd like to declare? Seeing none, we'll move on. And then we do need to take action on application completeness. Is this where you were headed, or do we?
Yeah,
How do you want to handle that?
So what I was thinking was we can kind of go through all this. It sounded like essentially declaring an application to be complete is the last thing you do before you start trying to approve it. And what you're essentially saying is we've got all the information we need to make a decision.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't do it now because I'm not sure that I know I have some questions that I want to finish filling this out, the findings of fact out. And so I guess my recommendation is kind of
Hold that
basically
vote
do the
until we-
review.
Okay.
And then do the complete application
Mhm.
and then do any votes on whether saying it's complete does not, it doesn't mean that it is approved. It's just saying, yeah, we've got all the information that we need now. We can make decisions.
I got you.
That's how, at least I understood it.
Okay.
Hoping that's how you understood it as well.
I think it's fine. I think the key takeaway from the lawyer conversation we had last time was that we just need to take the action
Yeah,
on application completeness.
right.
And it wasn't specific about when it happened.
Yeah.
I guess it just had to happen before we actually voted on the application itself.
Right. And it's not, well, like, I kind of thought it was going to be an administrative, like, okay, we've got documents, we're ready to start now. It was kind of much different than,
Yeah.
than,
It was a good conversation.
yes, I thought so.
All right. Thank you for bearing with us while we're sorting through this stuff. All right. So do you have anything at this point that you'd like to fill us in on, or there's been some changes made? Did you want to address those, or do you have any
I can
questions? or-
give you just a quick rundown,
Great.
I
Yeah,
guess.
sure.
After our conversation last month, I think we're pretty conscientious about trying to meet what the board gave me directions on as far as frontage and size of the lots. We chose to go for the over 5 acre lots. I see some of my neighbors here and want to make sure that they understand what we're trying to do as well. Basically, all the lots are going to be roughly the same size as the lot that my house sits on now. They're going to be large sort of country lots, going from Lewis Hill Road straight back to basically the railway track. Just 6 big rectangles. And that's about it. We chose to keep the frontage on Lewis Hill Road. We talked about last month. Nothing that I think is out of line with what the code kind of reads.
Great. Thank you. Michael, do you want to walk us through it?
Sure, yeah, we should go through, we'll go through each of the articles in the code, I think.
Mhm.
But I do want to just mention, hopefully you all saw, there were 2 items that I think I just shared with you through Google Drive today, but that was updated plan that just had the width dimensions on there. And then there was also an analysis by Gartley and Dorsey that basically doing soil sample tests, which, there's no proposal to put any septic or anything on it right now, but I think that it is, the subdivision review does kind of touch on that. And I think it's smart to make sure that the lots are not like unbuildable if they're going to be created. That someone doesn't buy a lot and turns out, oh, you can't do anything. So that's not saying that they're going to be entitled. It's just the subdivision would make sense. So I do have one question about that, about the soil tests, which I read the letter and it basically just said, that it came back and said all the lots could potentially accommodate, I think it was a 4-unit house, but the table 1, there's a profile and a condition column, and I wasn't sure what profile 3 meant, and I wasn't sure what condition meant when it says like C or A3C. So I was just wondering if there was any, does that mean something that I should know about?
The site evaluator told me it was very favorable, had good soil all over the lot. I don't know if David Starr can answer that. Sure.
I cannot. I'm with Gartley and Dorsey. I'm a land surveyor by trade and I helped prepare, or I did prepare the map. Doug in our Camden office is our soils scientist, and he's the one that did the borings. And unfortunately, I don't know what those classifications mean because that's not my area of expertise.
Okay.
If the board wanted more information on detail on what those classifications are, I'm sure Doug could provide it.
Okay. Yeah, what I read here, it just says, this is from Doug, and says, I trust this letter demonstrates that all the lots are suitable for installing a septic system that supports a 4-bedroom house. Please let me know if you have any other questions. So I was just looking for some detail on that, but the letter, I mean, it does say that it's what 4-bedroom house. So you can take that for what you will. Do you want to dive into the articles now? Go through, I think probably the way that we should do this is you can go through each article and at the end have the board vote either when we get to the end of each article, or we can go through all of them and at the end go back and vote on the different articles. I think that would be the best way, given the conversation we had last time of like not voting on every single detail, but also not only voting once that it passes, so that there's some.
Absolutely. My only question about that process or procedure is what are they? How many of those
There's
A through
7.
U
Oh,
of subdivision?
yes, and we can vote kind of on those, because I will say each article, there's really one that is, it's only Article 7 that like gets into the substance, maybe Article 2 a little bit about lot size, but
I think we should probably, I mean, we're setting this up based on our conversation with the attorney. But I think just to cover our bases, like we agreed, like we talked about, we should vote on each individual article of the code. And then because this is specifically subdivision, we can either take one vote, but I'm guessing that the lawyer would rather that we had individual votes on each of the subdivision standards.
yeah.
Whether they're applicable to the subdivision or not, and a lot of them quite honestly aren't. But I think that shows we've addressed each one.
Yep, that's in the conclusions of law. I did put in basically put A through U, but they don't quite line. Actually, no, they do line up.
Yeah,
They do line up with with that. So
and
I
start
also-
starting with the articles and then go on.
yeah, and I also maybe we should review the articles, because also public hearing, which we do have to open it to public comment.
Yep.
We have to say so maybe we review the whole thing before we start doing the voting, open it up to the public comment, and then we'll come
Absolutely.
back and do it.
Right.
All right, so let me go through. Article 1 is general standards. It just is basically saying that this is applicable. That this project is governed by the core zoning code.
Yep.
Any issues, questions there?
No.
Okay, Article 2 is district standards. This is it's applicable to all projects that create new lots with virtual lot or with actual or virtual lot. So Article 2 is where we're going to get into we'll just get into it. All newly created lots must abut a public private road. This does, I said all 6 lots abut Lewis Hill Road. Newly lots shall be governed by the standards of the D1 district, which is the rural district. And the front lot line shall be the property line along Lewis Hill Road. I think I already mentioned this. Minimum lot width required 100 feet. And then I listed all of the different lot widths, which I said, range from 230 to 277. The primary frontage line length, which is the minimum there required, is 250. They range from 250 to 312. And then I just pointed out that no buildings are proposed as part of this application. Therefore, primary and accessory building setbacks, they're not applicable. They're not really relevant. I guess it's really what it is. Questions, comments on Article 2?
Very straightforward.
Site standards, there's no alterations to the site here. The applicability says the article applies to alterations made to the site, including but not limited to parking, access, access to the site from the road, landscaping, buffers. None of that is changing. There's not even driveways proposed at this point, so. I said that that article wasn't applicable. Same with, I will say 4, 5, 6. Building standards, design standards, and use standards. There's no buildings being proposed. The design standards aren't applicable in the rural district anyway. And use standards.
There's
Use-
nothing being proposed, yeah.
So that gets to, so anyway, are there questions on 3, 4, 5, or 6? Article 6. Okay. Article 7 is where we get into process. Applies to all projects in the town. We did the pre-submittal meeting. That was on July 18th. There was public notice. It was mailed to all of the neighbors. I think it was within, I think the required is within 1,000 feet. I think what you mentioned is you went a little bit beyond that to make sure that that was covered. And I got something that says, I've got receipts for certified mail that were dated July 29th and a copy of the letter. It's published notice in the newspaper, July 30th and August 31st, in the Lincoln County News. I got copies of that and receipt for that. And
August
then-
1st. August 1st?
Did I say something else?
You said 31st.
Oh, my apologies. Yes, August 1st. Haven't gotten to the 31st yet. And a public hearing was duly noticed, which is what the mailed and published notice was about, and will be held today, August 15th. Okay. Then we get into subdivision. This is, I assume we're going to have actually some conversation. The applicability here, subdivision applies for anything. It's basically the state's definition, which is division of a parcel into 3 or more lots within any 5-year period. There's more to it than that, but this clearly is at least that. The proposed creation of 6 parcels from the existing 1 parcel qualifies as a subdivision and is thus required to meet the standards set forth under Section 12 subdivision of Article 7 of the Newcastle Core Zoning Code. The planning board reviews and enforces all of the subdivision plan approval process. We'll have to determine whether it's complete. I will need to circulate this to the road commissioner, fire chief, life safety officer, and the sanitary district. It's just required. I'm not sure what comments they may or may not have, but find out. And then there's the approval standards. So first one is articles of this code, which we kind of just went through everything else. So I'm assuming that that's okay, that it meets those standards. The Newcastle Road driveway ordinance, there's nothing proposed, there's nothing that would be applicable under that. And subdivisions are required to meet it. So it does, because there's no driveways. Nothing proposed that would actually that ordinance governs. All right, pollution. A lot of what my approach was when I was reviewing this was, given that nothing's proposed, like there's not any pollution that is generated, but I also wanted to maybe go a little step further and say that reasonably expected development, like if what is allowed in the D1 district, and we can't possibly cover every possible scenario, but something can be done with the properties that would not cause pollution, essentially, and saying like, all right, so could you put a house on it and without causing pollution or, any running afoul of any of the other articles which will go through.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even necessarily that, I said sufficient area for this pollution, which proposed subdivision will not result in undue water or air pollution. And then there's a number of things which we'll go through. The planning board needs to consider the elevation above, elevation of the land above sea level and in relation to the floodplains. Sufficient area is available on each parcel or each proposed lot that potential future development can reasonably be sited away from and above sea level in flood hazard areas. So nothing is proposed, but if it was proposed, it probably could meet that. And again, we would, any new development that happens on that will still have to go through whatever normal process, depending on what's being proposed, would have. So this isn't going to get you around going through planning board review.
As a matter of fact, I might just interject real quick.
Yeah.
Because this is a subdivision in land only with no development being proposed. My understanding is that when and if an application comes forward for one or more of the lots to be developed, this will be, if it's approved, a legal subdivision recorded at the Registry of Deeds.
Yes.
Meaning that the applicant for whichever parcel is being developed would have to do the regular application process for their standard development for any lot in the rural district.
Mhm.
Would also have to be reviewed under that they meet the subdivision criteria
Subdivision amendment.
that was already approved for the developer.
Yeah.
So we'd be going through this again for each lot
Yeah.
to make sure that these pollution standards and this, as well as everything else is met.
I think, yes, that is kind of like the generally, once a subdivision is approved, it's a subdivision forever.
Yeah.
And any changes would be an amendment to the subdivision. The planning board could say that, up to 2 dwelling units on there in any one of the lots does not need to come back to the planning board. You could kind of say, like, look, you don't have to come back, go through subdivision review again, as long as you're within, something, so that you would still have to meet all of the regular core zoning code standards, but you could say, as long as you don't go above this, it's just, it can be reviewed, it can be the administrative review that goes through code enforcement. That goes to the code.
Sure,
As
but
an
that
option.
doesn't mean, I guess, just piggybacking on what you said before, it doesn't mean that if there were performance standards placed on the subdivision
Mhm.
at the time of approval, you're not getting around that
Right.
ever when you develop one of these lots.
Right.
You're subject to them. It must be reviewed in the consideration of those performance standards.
Yes.
Always.
Yep.
And I guess I just wanted to make that point, which is that because it's a subdivision, anytime you expand a subdivision or you develop something in a subdivision, you have to review the subdivision approval to make sure that you are in compliance with the subdivision as well as any of the underlying zoning.
Yeah, and I think, and absolutely, and kind of by default, subdivision amendments typically go to the plan.
Yes, that's,
So, but we can discuss kind of the conditions and things like that, when we get to that kind of that final vote. But questions on that? Does that make sense? I'm happy to go and read through all of this.
I don't know that you need to.
Would you be happy if I read through and read?
What I think would be best is if, this is all part of public record.
Mhm.
Not all of these things are applicable, again, because there's no proposed development.
Mhm.
So the ones that are the ones we should talk about.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll just run through and I'll kind of read the standard.
Yep.
And if you've got something,
Yep.
stop. All right, so this is all under pollution. We just covered the elevation of the land above sea level. This is the nature of soils and subsoils and their ability to adequately support waste disposal, the slope of the land and its effect on effluents, the availability of streams for disposal of effluents. The applicable state and local health and water resource rules and regulations, the elevation of the proposed parcel, can accommodate future development well above and away floodplains. Results from soil tests to determine the suitability of subsurface wastewater systems have been provided by the applicant and show each proposed lot to be able to accommodate such systems.
We've got all that. All the subsurface,
Mhm.
we've got the pits, the test pits that show we have good soils, good working and all that stuff.
I'm sorry, I'm just kind of looking at my numbering, which is kind of irrelevant, but the proposed lots do contain areas of steeper slopes. However, each lot contains areas sufficiently level to accommodate future development without undue erosion and negative impacts on effluents. I think I messed up the numbering, but that's okay.
You did, but that's okay.
No significant stream should be impacted by future development allowable under this code, undertaking with sufficient precautions and considerations. No state or local health water resource rules have been identified that would be relevant to the subdivision or potential future development. All right, so that sufficient water. Proposed subdivision has sufficient water available for the reasonably foreseeable needs of the subdivision. Municipal water supply, not going to be on that. Erosion. The proposed subdivision will not create unreasonable soil erosion. Traffic, the proposed subdivision will not cause unreasonable highway or public road congestion or unsafe conditions. Sewage disposal. The proposed subdivision will provide for adequate sewage waste disposal and will not cause unreasonable burden on municipal services that are going to be utilized. There's not any municipal sewage available there. Municipal solid waste disposal, the proposed subdivision will not cause an unreasonable burden on the municipality's ability to dispose of solid waste. Aesthetic, cultural, and natural values. Proposed subdivision will not have an undue adverse effect on the scenic or natural beauty of the area, aesthetics, historic sites, significant wildlife habitat identified by Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, or the municipality, or rare and irreplaceable natural areas, or any public rights for physical or visual access to the shoreline. Financial and technical capacity. The subdivider has adequate financial and technical capacity to meet the standards of this section. Surface waters, whenever situated entirely or partially within the waste watershed of any pond or lake, or within 250 feet of a wetland, great pond, or river, as defined. The proposed subdivision will not adversely affect the quality of that water body. Groundwater. I'm not even going to read the standards. We've got them. You've got them. Groundwater. Flood area. There's a condition which I'll come back to that is kind of required by that standard. Freshwater wetlands. River, stream, or brook. Stormwater, spaghetti lots, lake phosphorus concentration, impact on adjoining municipality, land subject to liquidation harvesting. Those are the standards. Has anybody identified anything they might like to discuss in any of those standards? So what I wanted to mention was for the flood areas, there's one of the conditions that is proposed, that I proposed on here, comes from this, which I'll just read you what's the relevant part of the standard says. The proposed subdivision plan must include a condition of plan approval requiring that principal structures in the subdivision will be constructed with their lowest floor, including the basement, at least 3 feet above the 100-year flood elevation. The 100-year flood elevation, I think there is like 11 feet. So I imagine, given the slopes there, most of the site is going to be able to accommodate that, but we will still make that a condition, which I don't think there should be any issue meeting for any future home building. I think that is, I can stop now and we can discuss anything you would like to discuss. Otherwise, it might be a good opportunity to public hearing.
Sure. Right. Does anyone have anything that they saw in the application they want to discuss?
As you comment, some of the lettering, there's a section that sort of repeats.
Yeah. I would look at that and try and sort it out.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a typo. We can,
Just
Yeah.
a type of-
if we approve it, we can approve it with the condition you're gonna fix it.
Yes, it's,
All right, so seeing no other comments from the board at this time, I'd like to open the application for public comment. Does anyone have public comment about the proposed subdivision application at this time?
I have questions.
Great, question, comment is fine. Just tell us, raise your hand and tell us
Yeah. I
where you
can
live
stand
and
up.
who you are.
Yeah, I live on Lewis Hill Road, Heidi Sprawl, probably like down the street, I think, I'm not actually sure where you live. So I first heard about this when I perused the Realty website, so I actually heard about it when I saw a piece of land for sale on Lewis Hill Road, and it actually said in there 6 parcels for sale. And then I got the letter saying it had to go through approval, so I was a little confused, but then I went back and now it's been updated and says there's one parcel for sale.
I could just correct that a little bit. It said one lot of
Of 6,
6.
yeah,
So.
it doesn't say that
It-
anymore.
it- But it didn't say 6 lots for sale.
It says
said
of the
one-
future, coming in the future, yeah. So my question with the 6 lots is, since we don't know what will happen with them, does that mean there'll be 6 driveways? I don't know if anyone's driven on Lewis Hill Road, but my daughter runs there, as do I, and where it's proposed, there's a curve, so I can't imagine 6 driveways there. When the speed limit's 30 and people go 50 because they use it as a pass through to get to Sheepscot Road. And I called the sheriff, and the sheriff, I get it, they're overwhelmed. But I just foresee a little bit of a issue there. I don't know how to correct it. Sure everyone would love to have speed bumps on Lewis Hill Road. That was a joke.
no, right.
So was that your question, or do you have some other comment to make?
About,
I didn't know if you were done.
nope.
Okay, great, keep going.
And then because it's zoned rural, and I believe you said there's no limitation what kind of building. That's a little scary to me. I don't know, maybe it's not to anyone else, but.
No, I think maybe what I said that, because there's definitely limitations on buildings. There's no design standards that, so those don't apply. There's in the code, one of the articles is design standards, and in Article 5, which just I think it essentially regulates components that can kind of go onto a house. So it might be bay windows or what most people think of as additions, although that means something slightly different.
Porches, decks, things
Yeah.
like that.
Things like that. So which are regulated in more like in town districts, like your porch can only be so deep or has to be at least this deep. There aren't those standards in the rural district. So, you can get probably, I assume it's more about like, you can get agricultural buildings, but essentially you can build a house and you don't have to worry about meeting whatever those design standards are. But there still are standards, they're just, it's more about the whole building. And so I think if that was what you heard me say, there are definitely restrictions and standards for buildings. It's just that design section standard does not apply in the D1 district.
Okay.
So
And if it's 6 lots, is that right? Can someone, since we don't even know if someone will buy it, if they buy it, can they split that lot that they buy into further lots?
They can only,
No.
they can only do that if they did it in the back part of the lot. In order to split a lot, you have to have 250 feet of road frontage, and that's why it went from 8 to 6, because he didn't have the road frontage to do 8. So the only way they could split a lot is to put a road down into their property and do a back lot.
But even then,
But there's still a lot of stuff that goes
There's
with
still a
that.
lot of stuff that goes with that, and even then, it would be a modification of the subdivision.
Right.
So it'd have to go through subdivision all over again.
Right, so. If somebody wanted to, for any subdivision, if someone wants to modify it, split further. They have to go through subdivision. They have to go through a subdivision amendment process there. Which we were discussing before, by default kind of goes to the planning board. I wouldn't recommend, kind of carving that out
Mhm.
and letting it go through,
No.
code enforcement, though, kind of defeat the purpose,
Yeah.
but, even if they, so let's say they went through that process. The standard in the rural is your lots have to be at least 100 feet wide and they need to have at least 250 feet of road frontage. Right now, given the road that exists there, this is as many lots as you can get on. On that without building a new road. If somebody wanted to build a new road, almost, I think it's like basically next to the train tracks. You probably could get more lots back there in theory.
Isn't it a wetland? Isn't that?
Yeah, right, you have to deal with the wetland, I don't know if that, I think that wetland is in shoreline, so you wouldn't be able to build there. I don't wanna say like, no, you couldn't, I think it would be very difficult.
If I could, we kind of looked at that when we were looking at the initial layout, and the site really doesn't avail itself to backlots and the construction of a road. Dan and I discussed that a little bit, and it was our opinion that it really wasn't feasible there, given the steep slopes and the cost of construction for a road, that it just didn't make sense. So I think, yeah, in theory, on paper, it could be done, but in practicality, I think that it's highly unlikely that anyone would be able to, get built in behind feasibly.
We live there too. We like the rural nature of the land. That's my grandparents' place. And I hope to die there. So we want to keep it kind of how it is.
I think the traffic's probably my biggest concern, honestly. I don't know, I mean, maybe if it's one driveway splitting off, I don't know. I guess I can't see how it would work, but I don't.
So just to answer your question and be crystal clear, each lot would be entitled to its own individual driveway.
No, I understand.
But we do encourage shared driveways. And that was originally part of the question that we had, we talked about when we had our pre-submittal meeting last month about the project. Because I think there was interest in providing something like that, so it'll depend on the future landowners and their desire to develop how they want to with their neighbors.
We also had the code enforcement officer do a site visit with us. And his first reaction was that additional driveways along the road would actually serve to help slow people down a little bit.
People
You're right.
Then we've tried for years. We've tried for years to get people to slow down on Lewis Hill Road. We had kids on Lewis Hill.
All right,
Road.
I'm sorry, if you're gonna talk, could you stand up, tell us who you
Yes,
are?
my name is Lisa McFarland and I live just down the road from Dan. And for many, many years, we've tried to get traffic to slow down on Lewis Hill Road. It's basically used as a shortcut between Sheepshead and Route 1 for people going back and forth to work. But they don't slow down. They go as fast as they want. They take that sharp corner right by my house on the wrong side of the road every time. And I'm waiting for a very bad accident to happen. I'm very concerned about the increased traffic for future development. Lewis Hill Road is not made for traffic. It's a very narrow road. It has very sharp corners, steep hills and deep ditches. And even today, I had to pull off the road for a car that was coming down the road too far on my side of the road. I'm just not happy with 6 more driveways and maybe potential for development on such a small road. It's just not safe And I would be concerned for anyone who thought they were gonna build a family home on this road with small children that could potentially be riding their bikes or walking up and down the road, because it's just not safe. And even further driveways would just increase that even more. It's just very concerning to me. I know he says he's not gonna develop those pieces of land right now, but how long before it is developed? I mean, what are we looking at for a time frame? If somebody buys that land, they're gonna want to do something with it. If they're not gonna live there, they may use it for other reasons. I'm not happy with potential for further traffic and development on Lewis Hill Road as it stands now, because the road is not safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm not too happy either, by the way. I'm not too happy either.
Great, I'm sorry,
I
I,
get mail.
I saw someone in the back with their hand up first.
Oh,
I'll get you in just a second.
So Ellen McFarland, Lewis Hill Road, and I do wanna just agree with the points that have been made about the road. I think if you're gonna add 6 driveways, there needs to be some very. There needs to be a heightened sense of concern over the placement of those, because there are blind corners, blind knolls. We do try to recreate on that road. I'm guilty of riding my horses on that road, and sometimes I do feel like I've taken my life into my hands, and I do it anyway. Very, very narrow road, no shoulder. There's not even a place where you can get off, and 2 trucks, because we drive a truck, and sometimes 2 trucks trying to pass one another, you literally have either got to stop or you've really got to try to put yourself off in the two-lease. So if you're gonna do 6 driveways, I really think there needs to be some attention paid to where the driveway is gonna be placed. Because it's a racetrack and it's a crossover, that's really what it's used for, and I don't see that changing. The other question I had was use in the D1. What are the acceptable uses in that district? So it's rural, but it's not just residential, or, could we have an apartment building there? Could we have a business there? In-home business, what kind of development could take place on those lots?
So start with the last question first. It's hard to answer. The best thing to do is to look at the district page for that district. And there's a use table for each district, and I can tell you. Generally, I can say uses are pretty much residential in nature. When you have 5 acres or more, which these lots will be, it does unlock the possibility to have more commercial type activities in the rural district. And some of those are more home-based in nature, what you would call home occupation type businesses. Others are more agricultural. So the best place to look is in the use table, instead of just I'm not going to list all of them right now. But it's a good question. To the driveway question, there's two things I can tell you. One is that when an application comes forward to develop one of those lots, it will have to meet the Newcastle Road Driveways and Entrances Ordinance. And what that does is exactly what you were just saying. It takes into account the speed of the road, the curves on the road, sight lines on the road, and it puts standards that were developed by the DOT about safety for where you can locate those entrances. And I'll be completely brutally honest, the way it's going to work with these 6 lots is the first person who buys a lot is going to get prime consideration for where they put their driveway. The 6th person to buy a lot is going to have very limited options just by the nature of the road and the measurements of it. So there will be a lot of review about where those entrances and driveways are placed when and if the time comes that they come forward. They're not going to be allowed to just be put in willy-nilly. The second thing I would say is that, just to, I understand everyone's a little bit nervous about development. Just to go back a little bit in the history, and maybe give you a little bit of peace of mind. The old land use ordinance that we had before the current core zoning code ordinance that we have would have allowed lots 100 feet in width. And you could have had a driveway every 100 feet anywhere in the rural. And what the core zoning code did through a lot of conversation and a lot of input from residents was to hear folks say, we don't want that density of development along the rural roads. And so we got the standard pushed up to 250 feet. That's roughly the distance between telephone poles. If you go out and drive any of our rural roads, it's roughly the distance between one pole to the next. So you can imagine one driveway between each two poles. And that's sort of where we landed as a way to say we don't want that level of intensity of development in our rural district. So we've done some work in that regard. It may not be enough or what you want it to be necessarily, and if that's the case, come forward with suggestions on how to protect our rural lands from increased development. It's always a conversation that we welcome.
I will say by having the standards we have, last month when we heard this, we had 8, it would have been 8 driveways. It went down to 6, so, I mean, this did save, you know, a couple of lots on that road.
Any other public comments?
Well, no, because McFarland covered them, because she rides her horses by our house and I quite like seeing them actually.
Sure.
I'm so afraid someone's gonna hit them and kill both of them. You know, and nobody slows down. No one slows down. I almost got hit by a guy and then he gave me the finger because he almost hit me at the mailbox. So I'm not real happy about this.
Alan, yes.
So just one more question, Bill, how many driveways, additional driveways does it take before either the town and state, this is a town road, right?
Correct.
So how many driveways added does it take before they actually look at the road and determine if the road needs to be amended to accommodate that kind of activity in the, you know, the volume of residential homes? Is there?
There are no standards. There are no standards for that kind of thought process. I've longed to have that conversation with the town.
Well, there you go.
Absolutely. I hear a volunteer.
Aren't there traffic density standards?
So the ordinance I was referring to, the Newcastle roads, driveways and entrances ordinance follows the DOT standards for construction of road, sightlines for entrances and driveways and things like that. It's short, it's sweet, it's not much. If there's appetite to address it to make it more robust, again, always welcome to have that conversation.
Well, the reason I'm asking that is it sounds like an awful lot of the traffic isn't part of the neighborhood. They're going from someplace to somewhere else. And when we dealt with the Damascotta Mills thing, the state put those things down to measure the density of traffic, not necessarily the residents. And you might be able to, I'm just thinking you might be able to make a case that the traffic density isn't appropriate for that size road.
That road is only 15.5 feet wide.
Just tell us who you are, please.
McFarland.
Thank you.
That road is only 15.5 feet wide
In places, yes.
in places, and it's not very good shape.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jenny Meckes, live at the end of the road. So I have a question, is there any process for you guys to make referrals or recommendations to? We have a road commissioner for the town? Who
We
is
do.
it now?
It is Seth Hagar.
Okay, it's still there. Do you guys ever make recommendations about like, a lot of concern about the road? The width of the road. It's not an exaggeration as far as say 2 full-size vehicles cannot pass safely at the posted speed limit, which is 30 miles per hour, which I've questioned right along when it was increased, as far as you hear about single rod road and. I don't know if it fits that criteria, but I think 30 is too fast, 25. What seemed more appropriate, and I think it has to do with how many residences on the road or the proximity of the residences as far as how they come up with the speed limits. You guys might know better, but is there any way that you guys formally do comment to the road commissioner as far as, because this is potentially, actually it's 7, because there's gonna be 7 lots really that if this all goes through and they're sold.
No.
Or 7 new drive, well, there's
6.
also the parcel, there's also the other. Taking it all into consideration as far as lots that are gonna potentially be for sale. Or building, when, isn't there another one?
No, you just increased, the 8 lots were actually bundled into 6, so there should,
Alright,
there
I
would
must have
not
misunderstood.
be.
But I guess safety is a huge concern and the traffic, and the speed. As far as if the post is being, it's 30, the average person's gonna go 35, and there are a lot of turns, and it's not really safe, so. I guess what I'm asking is there any process that then you're, aside from having them do their part for each of these projects, do you ever give any feedback and saying, look, we got a lot of comment about speed limit, about traffic flow, and not like, or is that left to us to then reach out to the road commissioner and say?
Well, both is the answer, and there's nothing stopping the planning board from ever making a recommendation to anyone in town government for any reason. As long as it falls in the purview of the planning board, which is what we're doing here. I will share with you that the residents of North Newcastle Road a couple years ago were unhappy with the speed limit there. And the solution was to have the DOT come and do an inventory of all of our roads and posted speed limits to see if they were in compliance or not, and there were some oddities discovered. Unfortunately, the opposite of what the residents desired to have happen, the speed limit be lowered, it was actually increased because of how they review the roads. And that's probably when the speed limit on Lewis Hill also was set to 30 from 25 during that same time, would be my guess. Sometimes getting the DOT involved doesn't always go exactly the way that you hope.
No, well,
Yeah.
we might end up with a rotary, but.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right. So, I mean, our planner, Michael Martone is our town planner here. Obviously, he's taking minutes and all this stuff and will be communicating all of this to the town office staff. It would go to the town manager. The town manager would then have a meeting presumably with the road commissioner, and we can encourage that to happen.
Yeah, I think it's something that it's like hearing it from everyone would be great if they would take a closer look at.
Certainly.
I've definitely been pulling some ears to see if we can get maybe one of those electronic speed signs from the sheriff's department. Just so people voluntary compliance, but also if there's any way for them to have any reporting.
Those things work great for the first week.
They do, they work as long as they're there.
Wonderful.
But yeah, that's just.
Yeah, no, I think the concerns that everybody's raising are understandable, and there are plenty of potential solutions out there. Obviously, there's any number of ways that things don't happen because municipal government is, horse by committee kind of situation. So I am very happy that there are so many people here and that so many people are kind of on the same page. So trying to get something done, need to kind of, and I don't know if everybody in the select board feels this way. I imagine though, you kind of have to like make us do, and I'm not on the select board, I'm the planner. You have to kind of make us do what we want to do. So, sometimes when we're working on amending the zoning code, it's like, yeah, this seems like a great idea. And then only people who are against things tend to come out. So there absolutely are things that we can do. It's, but when they come forward, like, please also come out and push so that, you know, we have to do those things. And it's, again, it's not because we don't want to as staff, or I imagine as electives or anybody else, it's, you know, I'm sure there are other people who love speeding down that road that live in town, and so they will come out and say, no, we don't want that. So,
Yeah, I would add, it's not how loud you bark, it's how consistent you are.
which, yeah, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Lisa McFarland again, I just have a couple more concerns regarding the use of the road. When there is construction or an accident on Route 1, our road is used as the detour. And it increases the traffic by millions. You wouldn't even, it's one right after the other. It's from both ends, the Sheepscot end and the Route 1 end. And if anything happens on Route 1 at either end of those roads, the traffic all comes up our road. And we never know when it's gonna happen. We just notice that there's a significant increase in traffic. So we all stay away from the road. We assume there's something going on. But it's just one of those things where you do worry. If there's gonna be more traffic on the road and then an accident happens, it's gonna be a little scary. That's all I have to say.
Does anybody else have any other public comments this time? Seeing that, I'm gonna go ahead and close, without objection, I will close the public hearing portion of this application review. So done, and we'll move into actual review, voting. Okay, Michael. How did you want to do this again? You want to vote on each of the articles?
Well, yeah, I guess it's how would you like to do it? And I will tell you what my recommendation is. We can go through and vote on each article, so each chapter, right? As you probably saw, there's not a lot of substance in a lot of them. So we can do that. I would also say that there are approval standards on page 5 of this findings of fact that I shared with you, the draft. Under the approval standards, there is A through U, which I think are all very relevant and applicable. Well, they are applicable for any subdivision application. Those I would definitely recommend voting individually on. You could potentially consolidate the article, 1 through 6 vote.
Well, I was gonna say we could
But it's
do
up to you.
1 and 2 and consolidate 3, 4, 5, and 6 into one vote. 7 is the vote that contains the subdivision. So
Yeah,
I think we go through the A through U and then take one vote on Article 7 at the end of that. Before all that, though, we should probably make a determination of completeness.
just going to say.
All right. So at this time, is there a motion on to accept the application as complete? Moved, seconded, moved and seconded. Any other conversation and discussions about completeness? I think we have everything we need.
So just for clarity's sake, we're voting to approve it
No,
tonight?
right now, we're voting on the completeness of the application.
And
Then we're gonna vote each individual
just
for the approval.
to touch on that.
But then the approval will be a separate vote?
Yes, yeah, and this is not how we've been doing it. This is a little more elaborate. But this is based on the advice of legal counsel. But I do want to just point out for procedure, couple snippets in here that will give some context to the completion vote. It says within 30 days after receiving an application for subdivision plan approval, the planning board must determine that the application is complete and for review. Public hearing. Maybe I took it out. Essentially, after you vote that it is complete, you've got 30 days to make a decision.
Yep.
I don't know if you need 30 days, but it does kind of start a clock.
Yep.
So, yes, but this is just to say you got enough information in front of you to consider a decision. You're not saying whether or not it is approved or isn't.
Okay. Thank you. We have a motion in a second. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Any further discussion about completeness? Seeing none, all in favor of approving or of passing the motion for the application being complete? That passes 5-0. So now at this time, I think we can actually start.
Reviewing. Okay, so I believe what you said was want to do articles 1 and 2 together.
Yes.
Well, I guess it's
Yes.
you get to make the motion. So
No, I'll make the motion that we combine Article 1 and 2, and I'll make a motion that I don't know how to word these.
I would say that the application meets the standards.
Meets the standards of the code,
Yeah, and
of
then
the articles.
of article or of section when we get to. So what I would say is the motion would be that it does meet the standard, and then yay vote would be yes, it meets the standard, and a nay vote would be it does not meet the standard. I think that way it doesn't get confusing with.
Okay, there's a lot of voting.
Yeah.
You guys ready?
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a motion that actually, I'm gonna do it this way. Without objection, I'm going to combine Articles 1 and 2. So I will then make a motion that the application does meet the standards of Article 1 and 2 as presented. Second. Thank you. Any discussion about that motion? All in favor of the motion? That passes 5-0. I'll then make a motion, or I will say that, where are we? 1 and 2. 3?
Yep.
No, I'm gonna combine. Without objection, I'm gonna combine Articles 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
No objection?
Well, you know what I might say for a motion is that it meets it or they're not applicable, or that it's, I would say that those are not applicable. Doesn't meet them or not, it just those are not applicable for this application.
Yeah, so I will move that Articles 3, 4, 5, and 6, the application is not applicable because it doesn't have anything to do with those standards.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? 5-0. Okay, Article 7 now, we're gonna jump down to the A through. God, it starts on page.
Should be 5, I think. Yeah.
5.
The
I was going down to the summary. You had
Are you-
there,
oh yeah, you can do that too.
just in the conclusions of law there. You've got A through.
That's on 10. It starts.
Starts on 10.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll make a motion that the, oh geez, how do we say this? No, that's not gonna work. That's not gonna work.
Here, I think this is what the ordinance says is. Planning board must approve subdivision and issue upon verifying consistency to the following. So I guess I would say that the proposed application is consistent with, and then, the standards of this.
The
code
standards
is
of
the
code,
first.
specifically the standards set for the D1 rural zoning district under Article 2 district standards. Do I have a second? Seconded by Wanda. Any discussion? All in favor? Item A passes. So now you go to C. Why did you skip B?
Well, why don't we go through the
The actual
way that it's listed in, because I'm gonna have to edit the conclusions of law here.
That's fine.
But the way that it's listed in the code, which B is the Newcastle Road driveway and ordinance, an entrance ordinance. I would say is
Not
not
applicable.
applicable.
All right, so I'll make a motion that the item B, the Newcastle Road Drivers and Entrances Ordinance is not applicable to this application.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion, all in favor? Passes 5-0. Okay, item C, pollution. I'll make a motion that the proposed subdivision will not result in undue water or air pollution. Period. Thank you. Discussion? All in favor? 5-0. Item D, sufficient water. The proposed subdivision, I'll make a motion that the proposed subdivision has sufficient water available and reasonable needs of the subdivision. I don't even know that that's applicable at this time. And that's the other thing, the question I had about these ones that just, because there's no development,
Yeah, well,
do we say that it's just not applicable?
I think
At
that's
this time.
fair.
All right, in that case, I am gonna combine some of these, so I retract my motion and I'm gonna say D, E, G, H, I,
But F is erosion, there's nothing,
there's nothing in erosion?
no.
No, I guess you're right.
proposed.
Okay, so, okay, I was saving that one, but D, E, F, G, H, sewage disposal, I, municipal solid waste disposal. There's nothing that's impacting most of these. J, K, L, M. I'll hold flood areas out because you flagged it. So M, O, P, Q, R, S, T, and U. I'll make a motion, we combine all of those. I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
You wanna?
What?
I was gonna say, do you wanna just like say what they are?
Yeah.
Just like
Let me
the,
go back. All right. D, sufficient water, E, municipal water supply, F, erosion, G, traffic. Thank you everyone for the comments. H, sewage disposal, I, municipal solid waste disposal, J, aesthetic, cultural, and natural values, K, financial and technical capacity, I, surface waters,
L.
I'm sorry, L, surface waters, M, groundwater, O, freshwater wetlands, P, river, stream, or brook, Q, stormwater, R, spaghetti lots, S, lake phosphorus concentration, T, impact on adjoining municipality, and U, lands subject to liquidation harvesting. So I've got a motion and a second to combine all of those. Any discussion about combining all of those? All in favor of combining all of those? That passes 5-0.
Who was the second on that? Was that Kevin?
Now I'll make a motion to approve each of those, saying that none of those,
Or applicable.
none of them are applicable at this time because there's no proposed development.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion about that? All in favor? That passes 5-0. I'm gonna go back and move item N, flood areas. Separately. Do I have a second? Kevin, second?
That it is consistent, is that what the motion is?
Yeah, that it is consistent with the condition of approval that you suggested that we add to the conclusions of the law finding of fact. Is that
Yeah, no, that
adequate
makes,
motion?
yep, I think that works for me.
Seconded by Kevin. Do we have any further discussion about item N, flood areas? Seeing none, all in favor? That passes 5-0. Okay. So at this point, all the subdivision requirements have been reviewed and found either meeting or not applicable to the application as presented. So I will make a motion that the application is in compliance with Article 7, administration. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Wanda. Any further discussion? All in favor? That passes 5-0.
I think that's all of the standards.
Yep.
I think E is just definition, so I don't see any reason to vote on that. If you are considering a motion to approve. There are some conditions that I would like to suggest.
Great.
I mentioned the one and you mentioned it, the principal structures proposed on any lot within the subdivision shall be constructed with their lowest floor, including the basement, at least 3 feet above the 100-year flood elevation. There were some other conditions that are just in the code, and I tried to pull them out here and make them somewhat relevant to this. One is 2 survey monument markers made of granite or concrete shall be laid out as indicated in the final approved subdivision plan. At the southernmost corner of the existing lot where the side lot line meets the Lewis Hill Road right of way, and at the easternmost corner of the existing lot where the side lot line meets Lewis Hill Road right of way. And the tops of the monuments and their location and grade shall be established and approved by the road commissioner. The monuments must be of sufficient depth to reach below the frost line. That's all in the code. I just specified the 2 locations, and one is, it's not exactly square, but the southernmost is basically where the lot line, that one corner, and the easternmost is the other end of it. So you have 2 monument markers there, which then when everything else gets platted will be measured from. So those are the 2 conditions that are beyond what normally is required on all of these.
All right, do I have a motion to accept the conditions for approval as given to us by the town planner? Moved. Seconded by Wanda. Any discussion about those conditions? Questions?
Do you have any issue with those?
Seeing none, all in favor of those conditions of approval? Being added, thank you. All right, at this time, I would entertain a motion to accept the application for approval based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law that have been presented to us by the town planner. Do I have a motion? Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All right. Any further discussion about the application at this time? Seeing none, all in favor of approval? Passes 5-0. Thank you. So, just to be clear about the process going forward from here, you will be submitting this to the various people you mentioned earlier. Life Safety, the road commission will get a copy and review, obviously, the monument placement as we just talked about.
Yeah.
After all of that is done and they sign off on it, the applicant will need to file it with the Registry of Deeds as a plan, as a subdivision plan.
Yes, what will need to happen is you'll have to get, I think it's 2 or 3 full-size copies of the plan with the conditions, printed on it somewhere, and the planning board will have to sign it. That one, a signed copy, we'll give you one back. A signed copy will have to go to the Registry of Deeds. I think we can give you 2 copies. Either way, a signed copy has to go to the Registry of Deeds to be registered. The conditions will be on there, and then it will be essentially it'll be official.
All right, we are done with our review of the subdivision. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for coming and providing public comment. All right, so under new business, item A, as we added, we need to elect, and we should elect a chair and a vice chair for the upcoming year. This is something that is in our bylaws that we need to do every year. And we just haven't done it yet.
Yeah, supposed to be like the first meeting or the last, I guess it's supposed to be the first meeting of the.
Thank you very much.
The first meeting of after the end, well, I'm sure you know, the first meeting of the year.
First meeting of the year.
After everybody gets appointed and
Right.
reappointed and.
Okay, so this is always a fun conversation. Anybody interested in chairing the planning board.
I think that you're eminently qualified. I second that.
And this is usually how it happens. So-
You get grouped up on,
Yeah, that's right.
you get bull rush.
That's right. Okay, so I'm happy to chair, I'm happy to chair the planning board for another year, the remainder of the year, or whatever. I just want to state that my goal is to work my way off of it.
Just
So,
be a selectman.
yes, we're actively recruiting. Thank you so much for joining the planning board. Much appreciated. We got a couple other potential pokers in the fire, so if we can get up to 7 members, I would gracefully make my exit. So I'm happy to fill in the role of chair until that time. My preference would be that it would be sooner rather than later. We'll just have to see how that goes. Also, I'm very cognizant and aware that I don't want to leave everybody feeling like, you know, unsettled about it. So that being said, there will be some upcoming opportunities for planning board training. In October or September. I can't remember exactly.
I don't know. MMA puts out something.
Yeah.
They let us know.
And there's online courses, but there's also in-person courses. I strongly recommend anyone who's interested, go to the ones in person, because you get to mingle with other elected officials and planning board members from other towns, which is, you gain a whole lot of insight into what's going on in other towns, but how they also do things, which is great.
Yeah, yeah. I would also just point out that the training that we held here was recorded and is available to watch if so inclined. And that was planning board and appeals board and historic preservation was what was here, but it was anything that you might want to consider. So that's useful. And I will say there's only really one requirement to be in compliance member of the planning board, and that is to it's about FOA request, which is Freedom of Information Act or Freedom of Access Act. And I think watching that video will qualify. So if you weren't at that meeting or don't want to wait for MMA, you can just watch that. That should qualify you.
That also being said, we did put aside a little bit more money in the budget this year to do more of that type of training in-house.
Yeah.
And invite speakers and people from MMA, or they can give us the required certifications or credits that we need.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll be bringing some more of those forward this year.
Yeah.
1 or 2 would be great. Okay.
I'm certainly glad to do some of that. I do appreciate being in person, because sitting there and watching something where there's no feedback loop at all, it's kind of hard to stay awake.
Yeah.
I totally understand.
All right, so let's make the chair official. Do we have a motion? Thank you. Yes, and a second. Thank you. Okay, so all in favor of electing me as the chair for another year, 4-0. Do we have a nomination or
So did you abstain then?
I abstain. I'm not going to vote for myself.
I mean,
Yeah.
you could.
All right. That's
Okay, but I just want to make sure that we're clear.
We're
It's
good.
4-0-1. Got it. Okay.
Anyone interested in being vice chair? Vice chair is basically the chair when the chair isn't here.
I feel like I'm still too new, so.
Who knew? Well, that would be either of you guys.
Same feeling. I mean, it's honestly, it's. And I know that it's partly, it was like, I was just looking at the MMA 88th annual convention is the 2nd and 3rd of August.
Yeah.
Of August?
Of
October.
October.
In the Augusta Civic Center.
Yeah.
And I know that I've missed multiple other opportunities because they're all during the workday.
They are all there.
And, you know, it's hard to do that.
It is really hard to do that. Which is why, I mean, during obviously the pandemic, they offered online stuff and
Which we're still during the day.
yes, exactly.
I'm still working, yeah, so,
I am gonna be
But-
going to the MMA conference at least one of the days.
yeah.
If anyone wants to join, I didn't know if anyone else from the.
I was not
office
gonna go this-
You weren't gonna go this year?
No.
I think
Mhm.
Kevin might be going, I'm not sure what I be yet.
So what, I mean. What happens at the annual convention? It sounds like we all get together and rub.
We do a little bit of hobnobbing. It's a good, again, it's a good place to meet other people who are in similar positions as you and, you know, find out what they're facing. But they're speakers, mostly speakers, and, you know, there's a lunch and, you get to choose different, you know, things. They usually run different seminars concurrently, so you can go to ones that are interesting to you. They've got the, schedule of all the events posted on their site, so, yeah, it is interesting.
I think I'm on vacation.
Go to Augusta.
Yeah.
In Freiburg.
Oh, no, yeah, you don't want to go. Anyway, we do need a vice chair, so
Can't be me, I don't. think.
I know it can't be you. I guess the reason I'm looking at you is because what I will say is that, I know I do a lot of talking and I apologize for that, but
We thank you for that.
the actual job of running, the meeting is really just running the meeting. It's walking through the agenda and then going, Michael, take it away. Because Michael does most of the work for us. So, you know, in the rare occasion that I might not be here, it's just as simple as that. It's not really, I hope to make it not an onerous thing. This was a wonderful example of the change I think that we've seen in planning board meetings over the years, you know. They came, they had wonderful comments, they expressed their concerns, we listened to them. And we gave, I think, hopefully some good feedback. And then, you know, we moved on to the application and it was checking the boxes. So,
And I think that's what's hard is that, you know, you give your feedback and then things just still don't go your way, but we have to look at it from what's
in the
in the
code.
book.
Right, I mean, their concern wasn't really what we were discussing.
Right.
The guy wants to subdivide his property and there are no driveways.
No,
Yeah.
and I will tell you, driveways and traffic, we've been hearing that on pretty much every road in Newcastle, especially every back road that we all live on, so.
Right. Right. Yeah, the fact that there's too much traffic isn't.
And it's too
function
fast,
Really of how many drivers there are. It's the fact that it is.
and
way
the
to
speed
get-
that people are driving.
It's the way to avoid the traffic light.
And the sad thing is speed limits don't control that.
Oh,
either.
the Mills is the Damascus Mills Motor Speedway.
Yeah.
Like people just blow down that
Oh,
road.
yeah.
Aren't we supposed to do that?
All right.
So-
One lady.
so anyway,
Vice chair.
So it is,
I'm talking
I
about the road
appreciate
along the-
that we have
yeah.
a professional here.
Yes,
to
and that's what I'm
steer
trying to
us
say.
Straight whenever we're
Exactly.
floundering.
That's
Well
right.
controlled.
That's right. We have a professional.
Which is a.
In the room.
improvement Over.
We have an adult in the group, one. So,
Yeah, I'm happy to assist as much as desired, you know, so. Obviously it really is running the meeting, because it's kind of hard to do it wrong, but I'm happy to like, kind of be like, you know, here's what should be considered. Try anyway, so if you have, I'm happy to help us.
I mean, and if it's not obvious, when I don't know what I'm doing, I say, Michael, what do we do? I mean, I don't think anyone should be afraid of just kind of throwing their hands up and saying,
Yeah.
I don't know what we're doing. What do we do?
Well, I
Um,
think what's hard is that even though Kevin and I was very involved in doing the code thing, nobody knows it like you do, Ben. And it's
Oh.
a little intimidating when, you know, you just flip through these pages and because you know it well, because you typed it all.
Well, and because you think about it and have internalized it and improve on it in a way that I think
We just think,
no one else does. Yeah, yeah,
That's a blessing and a curse for Michael.
yeah, but you know.
So I won't name names, but years ago, I was on the healthcare trip to Washington to talk to our congresspeople and senators. And this one person, I won't mention a name, but she just kept asking her helper what her position was on something. And I know all the people here working really hard, they're volunteering, they're professional. And when you're on TV and you got a big crowd that's concerned about something, and I'm like, what do you feel about that? What are we supposed to do?
I know.
Mhm.
That is the challenge. It is more of the challenge. But I can't stress enough how different, and I think you were at you've been to those older planning
Oh,
board
good
meetings where
lord.
they're so contentious. And it's, you know, it's a different animal these days, I think, and I hope people see that. We really try to change the tone, really try to change the mood. So Lucas and Kevin as our sort of senior, senior, which of you, I think, is the question, would like to be vice chair for the year?
Is there such thing as co-vice chairs?
I don't care.
No,
I can read down the agenda and
yeah,
they might pull. Give me some input on this.
yeah, that's real, I mean,
I don't care.
I'm gonna nominate Lucas. Do I have a second?
Second.
Wanda, thank you. Any discussion before he runs out the door? All in favor of Lucas as vice chair for this year? Or to nothing? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I wanted just to mention, that you don't need to do this now, but I did think that it was a good suggestion and interesting. The select board basically said you can only be chair for what, like 2 out of the 3 years or something like that. Like, you can't do it for more. I don't think that's a bad idea because
Yeah, it forces the cycle through.
Yeah.
It forces it. That's, yeah. And that's the whole reason why there's term limits anyway.
no term limits here. Well,
Would you be interested in doing a copy and paste from their bylaws into our bylaws and bringing it back next month for?
Right. Yeah, because that's the other thing. We were gonna discuss bylaws and that's up to it. So,
Let's do that next month.
okay.
Did you get a copy of the bylaws? You did.
I may have.
Okay,
Did
you send me?
I
I do not have a.
Okay. all right. Well, you'll get it in the packet for next
Exciting
month.
reading.
Yes, it is.
Dive right into it.
All right, so the last thing we have on the agenda is item 5A, proposed core zoning code amendment for retail firearms sales regulations. And this is a continuation of the conversation we've been having for several months now about the moratorium on retail firearms sales that went into effect and will expire on, I want to say October 19th. Does that sound right? Doesn't matter at this point.
Yeah,
Well, it goes to vote, right?
No, the moratorium is set to expire on the
Oh, okay.
19th. The select board did set a agenda. They set a special town meeting for October 12th. Before the moratorium expires.
does anybody want a copy of, I guess you need a copy, because I don't know if I sent this to
Yeah, we got it.
you. Did I send
It's in the pack.
Okay, does anybody want a copy? Good.
So I guess my understanding was that this probably would end up going to a town vote, some sort of a referendum.
It'll have to, yeah.
So the moratorium is gonna, disappear before the election.
Before the November election.
Right.
Which is why we're gonna hold a special town meeting to vote on this
Oh, okay, all right.
on October 12th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the process, let's assume that you like whatever's in here. Gonna take it to the select board and give it to the select board and say, here, this is the planning board's recommendation. They will, I guess, direct us to have a public hearing.
Hold our own public hearing.
The planning board will have a public hearing, but because it's gonna adjust the land use ordinance, it's our core zoning code, and anytime that changes, planning board has to have a public hearing. And then it will have to go back to the select board for them to have to set it on the warrant. I imagine they'll have a public hearing.
They're not gonna have a public
They
hearing.
will, the public hearing will be.
It'll be our public hearing and then the special town.
So what you're doing now is just saying, yeah, this is good. We want the select board to take it and probably ask you to have a public hearing at the next meeting and then, or a special meeting, I'm not sure. And then it's gonna have to go back to the select board to go through the whole process of putting it on a warrant, setting a special town meeting, having a special town meeting.
Yeah, so if we approve what you've prepared for us tonight and we make the recommendation to the select board. They would in turn, at their next meeting, ask us to hold a public meeting at our next meeting. in September.
And that's just for public comment.
And that's for public comment. Yep, absolutely.
And
So we don't have to pick us, I don't think we have to pick all this up. I mean, we did cover a lot of this last.
Yep.
So I don't think we have to read through the whole thing. If we hit the high points just to familiarize Scott with what's going on.
I read through it earlier today.
You did.
what I just want to say is really what you're looking at is stuff that's to be added under Article 6 use standards. So retail firearm sales would be a new use, which is going to be defined and then standards applied to it. And then amend the definition of primary and secondary school as you see there. I think it's just a little bit more clear, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only question that I really had was just for Lucas, actually, because we were talking about the definitions around this, about firearms. I just wanted to make sure that you guys had talked at some point.
Mhm.
This makes sense. You know a lot more about this stuff than I do.
The definition for firearms?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's right out of the ATF's
Okay.
definition list for its own.
And that's, yeah, so the definition that's under item 2, like at the top of that page, firearms, we're not putting it in the ordinance. The definition of retail firearm sales just references that and it says as defined by the Code of Firearm Regulation, Title 27, Chapter. And that is the definition, because obviously you probably want the definitions. Okay.
Well, I think
You're right.
it seems reasonable to me. Do we want people to sell crossbows? I mean, it doesn't discharge by an explosive, but
And that's, that kind of came up and I think it was the decision that I interpreted was firearms. I want to just do what.
yeah, I mean, I don't know how many
ATF
people are like lining up to buy a crossbow.
Well, one of the definitions we talked about could have covered everything, including like kitchen cutlery.
It was,
As a
okay.
weapon.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And that seemed so broad.
Oh, and yeah, that's ridiculous.
So, yeah, so our last month's meeting, our charge to Michael was to just make it simple.
Yeah, there you go.
And I think this accomplishes that, right? So it locks it to that definition of firearms. It locks it to the uses that we said, which are regulating around primary, secondary, and tertiary schools. And it sets a buffer distance of 300 feet, which is the same buffer distance for discharge of a firearm within proximity to a residence. Is that correct? Is it just a residence or any
I
building?
think any building.
Any building.
Any building. So that's a number that's familiar to everyone and it seemed the most reasonable.
And it's just retail sales. We kind of made sure we were specific about that.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, those are the 4 items and
I think the proposed amendments reads fine. Under primary and secondary school.
Yeah, I do too. Yep. There you are. All right. Let's make it official. Do we have a motion? Let's see, what should the motion be? Motion should be to accept the recommendation, or accept the draft proposed changes to the core zoning code. And recommend to the select board to begin the process for public hearing.
yeah,
For said change.
basically to amend the core zoning.
Amend the core zoning code, right, exactly.
According to this.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you. Any more discussion about it? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, that passes 5-0. There it is.
Okay, we've gone. I had some other stuff that I wanted to discuss, but I just wanted maybe more just give you an update. If you haven't heard. George Chase, our now former code enforcement officer, has stepped away. So now I don't believe there is a code enforcement.
The select board appointed Kevin, the town manager, as the interim code enforcement officer
did George
with my
say?
objection.
He has.
And other duties as assigned.
Yes.
I know he has many jobs.
Yes, yes, and so he basically said he had to pick some, I think some of it was he's a job that he's kind of going back to more.
He had
It
too
wasn't-
much on his plate.
Yeah, there was no hard feelings. He is staying on to do plumbing inspections, to do the like licensed plumbing inspector role. At least temporarily until we can fill that. So, yeah, he's. I think part of it is he's also he's now a select board member in Edgecombe.
Yeah.
And
We are gonna miss him.
yes, so, yeah, so that's happening. So we're gonna be looking for a new code enforcement officer. As that's happening, I was already trying to work on kind of organizing the administrative application process when you come in. I think we've discussed this because we were talking about complete application forms and things like that. So I'm working on that and trying to figure out how this works right now, or how it should work, and we'll have to fill it in as we go, because at some point MUBEC, the building code is going to be, we're gonna have to start enforcing that sooner rather than later, at some point anyway. There's also, once you hit 2,000 people, you have to at least if I'm understanding correctly, you have to do life safety inspections and provide certificates of occupancy.
Are we at 2,000 pop? I don't know that we
We're
are.
not there yet, but we're
under.
getting close, so I just want to be on the radar.
Yeah.
And at some point, the whole process, the way that I'm seeing it, and I'm happy to hear any thoughts on this, is essentially when you go into the office, if you want to do a project, you can you don't have to necessarily, but we're happy to, you don't have to talk to me or the code enforcement officer. You can at least get the forms that you're going to need by talking with any of the staff that are in there, and some of it, so hopefully it'll be like kind of straightforward. You fill out that sheet that I've shared with you before. Are you doing this? And you answered no to all of these, then you don't need to worry about shoreland, or you don't need to worry about large project. So you'll be able to get the forms without too much conversation, and then submit that. The fee structure should be fairly simple. It'll, you say, I'm going for a small application. Okay, great. Here's the fee, and you can submit that. You can date it. The office will know what to do, and hopefully they can get to a point where they can say, yeah, you've got all the things that an application like this requires. So looks good, and they don't need to do much else with it. And then right now, there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect between the planning review, like when the planning board, or even when the code enforcement officer reviews something, and I know I remember you saying this to an applicant at some point, like the planning board does not approve a project. It really basically, it grants approval. There's not a permit, like the planning board doesn't issue permits. They say like, yeah, basically a permit can be issued. And so what I'd like to do is have like planning board, code enforcement, depending on the application type, have a review. And then there also should be a technical review that right now is kind of, because we don't have MUBEC, is going to be only part of that. Like fire should be looking at this. Plumbing inspections are, it should be part of that. The technical review is basically, are you allowed to put this use here? The planning board answers that. Code enforcement, can you, does it meet the setbacks and that? Generally, does core zoning code say yes, it's allowed? And then the next thing is the building going to stand up? Is it safe? Is it, if it needs to go through DEP, any other reviews that your project might need to go through, that a professional certified needs to look at, great. And then there will be basically a check, like, okay, we'll go down the list. This is everything that's required for this kind of application, great. And that all kind of releases then, yes, now we can issue a building permit. All of this kind of happens now. It's just that we need to define it and say, this is actually what happens, and create that space for the technical review and issue a building permit. Like people should be able to go to the town office and walk away with something. Some municipalities like give you a card you can put in your window and like, yes, I've gotten approval, great.
So we don't have checklists.
Basically, like right now, that's. The building and planning application permit was kind of rolled into one, and it's not that it shouldn't be rolled into one, it's it all should happen, it's just. We should be giving. There are a number of things that we need to be tied together in the office. And then all of that already kind of happens. The following this is the stuff that I think we need to define. And that is, once you get your building permit, which basically says, yeah, sure, now you can start digging or doing whatever it is you need to do. There already are inspections that the plumbing inspector has to do. And when we have MUBEC, you're gonna have there'll be inspections that are gonna have to happen then. Planning, there's really not any kind of inspections, but that permit being issued is one possible time to check on conditions or approval, make sure that they're met, right? You can say, yeah, great, you just need to get the fire department to sign off on it. So the planning board knows like a building permit's not gonna be issued until all of those conditions are met. Unless it explicitly says, yeah, you can go. The next time that that you would have a check on a condition would basically be a certificate of occupancy, which would happen after the project's done.
Right.
And what that can do is like, if you have a larger project and they say, yeah, well, we're gonna build a park if you let us build, 20 units. And it's like, great, okay, fine. They build the 20 units, they don't build the park, and it's like, well, right now, there's really like, once they pass go, there's not really any way for us to say, well, now you can't use this, and also. There's no peace of mind, like, well, did I do this properly? Am I done now? Or are there more, like, is this okay to use? We don't have any of that, so at the end, something, which already the state is. Once we get to 2,000 people, gonna say you need to be doing this anyway, even before we get into MUBEC land.
You're talking about the certificate of occupancy.
Yeah, and this isn't gonna be, something to close it out.
Yeah.
There was, I forget what it was, there was something else that we can kind of issue on that. Oh, it could be the use permit too. You basically wait to give a use permit until the building's built and.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this is when you get your use permit.
So it sounds like we've been talking about a lot of this stuff for a while, but there's an opportunity while we're in the search for a new code enforcement officer to clarify the roles between planning department and code enforcement, so that we close the end of the loop in terms of applications, and specifically all applications are going to be quarterbacked by the planning department, and enforcement will be more the role of the code enforcement officer. And that goes in with the larger conversation we've had for a couple of years is, in this town, we're very accustomed to, if you have a question about anything that has to do with, you call the CEO. Everyone knows that. And I think what we're saying is we'd like to encourage those, what can I do with my land? Or can I do this use? Or, those types of questions and all of that stuff really isn't the domain of the enforcement officer. It's really the domain of the planning department. So I'm giving you a whole bunch of extra work.
Well,
but I think that's naturally where it should go. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I hear that's what you're saying
Well,
as
that's
well.
gonna be a steep training and education curve
Yeah.
for the public.
Yeah. Well, all we've had in the past was a CEO.
Yeah.
So the CEO had to do all that.
And they still can and will. Like, I don't think this is gonna be an overnight thing. The way that I'm imagining right now, because we're gonna end up hiring a CEO and it's gonna be like it was, 2 months ago. But what I would like to get out of this in the next few months is, what are the different roles that, need to be managed, that the town needs to have? And it's, it's not like we need more capacity to do it, it's just gonna be to define it. And as things increase, as like the requirements increase, if they increase, hopefully will be clear to say, all right, well, we need to take this from the planner and we need to take this from the code enforcement officer. We need to shift it to or from or whatever it is. And so at least we know all of the all the jobs are getting done, and we can have the conversation of like who should be doing it.
Yep.
You know, because right now there's a lot of like, oh, well, I'm happy. If someone has questions, some people do call me and some people call George and or whoever the code enforcement officer is going to be. And that's fine. Like we're happy to. But I think it needs to be kind of clarified that when push comes to shove, here's who's responsible for that.
Right.
So I'm working on that. Some of this is also, I've been working on new application forms so that when you fill out an application, we're asking you for the information that the planning board or the code enforcement officer actually needs to make the decision and not, you know, I was looking at the shoreland zoning tree removal application. There's a bunch of stuff. It was asking about proposed structures and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, if you're coming in for a tree removal for a hazard tree or something like that, like you only need, there's a decent amount of information you need.
But you need this, not this.
Yeah, your name,
Yes.
your address, like who's you know, it's like basic stuff like that. And then just like, which trees are we taking out and what are you gonna replace it with or you know,
Yep.
You need to streamline processes.
so that's what I also am trying to work on. So I say this because some of it's gonna be new to you and being maybe like the next most informed people as to what happens inside of or with this whole process besides like the staff. And all of this, you know, it's gonna have to go through town manager and select board and you all are gonna like see it, but I just wanted like, if there are things you're like, this doesn't make sense to me, please let me know. And obviously I'm gonna be, I mean, we don't need to get into it tonight. And I'll stop talking now, but I just wanted to let you know that's going on.
Great.
Look forward to sharing.
One more thing to add to the agenda as just on the template is planner's report. Somehow it got
Yes.
lost.
No, I took it off because I just like haven't been.
Oh,
But
okay.
I will. That's kind of what this is.
Yeah.
I'll try and formalize it a bit more.
No, that's fine. I was just, it's all good. All right, do we have anything else? No other business? Without objection, I will say the meeting is adjourned at 8:16. No objections? We're adjourned.